thanks to Brooklyn Data Co. for organizing this and taking the baton. I've been a member of the DBT Meetup for quite some time, so I've seen a lot of great talks, but this is my first time actually sharing a bit of our story as well too, which is awesome. And as Scott had kind of mentioned previously, we've actually been working with Brooklyn Data Co. for at least 2 years, maybe even a little more than that now at this point, building out our entire modern data stack. And now we're even getting to the point where this talk will show how we're beyond just doing it for analytics, and we're putting in some of these really awesome operational analytics styles that everyone's been talking about recently. Cool. So hello and welcome to Leveraging DBT to Empower Artists Across the World. My name is Kyle Shannon, and I'm the data engineering lead at TeePublic. So I just wanted to kind of start out by talking about what we're doing to update our pipelines and taking advantage of this modern data stack, obviously highlighting DBT as a major key piece here. So I hop over here. Before I get into that, what is TeePublic? Let's set a little context and explain what TeePublic actually is. So TeePublic is the best place to discover art and apparel made by independent artists across the world. That is the pitch. But what we really do, right, is we are designers first, right? So we care about the designers in this marketplace more than the actual customer first. So designers are able to simply upload their artwork and decide how they want it to look across many different products. And that's really all they have to do. We work hard to create that experience for the uploader. So shout out to our content and creator team, making it as easy as possible for these designers and artists to be able to just take their hard work and put it on these different products. And TeePublic just handles the rest of that, from the fulfillment, logistics, customer service side. So really just letting the designers focus on what they do best. Beyond just being a platform that allows these designers to put their artwork up and sell it, we do actually have internal teams that are dedicated to this artist success and the growth of these artists. So they're responsible for engaging with designers across the platform to help educate them how they can better promote, sell, create, find different trends of different topics they should be looking for, inspire them for different artwork, and also just helping them to kind of engage and create a community around all these different designers as well. Because some people, might be inspired by engaging with others and learn from each other. So it's a really awesome, cool way to leverage that too. And then lastly, customer experience is most important, right? So we have a great customer success team and a great customer service team where their main focus is making sure that what the designer is working really hard on is providing the best customer experience to those customers, right? So the last thing we want to do is have someone do really great art, have their product be purchased, and have a bad experience. So we try and handle all of those pieces that the designer doesn't have to worry about, and then make the best experience for that customer so they come back to buy more and keep supporting these independent artists. So what I wanted to talk about today, and this is kind of primarily our goal that we are working on for this pipeline and DBT work. So our goal really to start out is we want to enable these artists to share their work with the world and allow the growth and success teams to be able to support these artists along the way. So in this slide here, you'll see a couple different pieces going on with it. We have two kind of primary data pipeline sources. One of them is the B2C marketing, which is going to be more getting that actual content these artists are creating onto all different advertising platforms. And the other is going to be the B2B, which is handling all of our artist management. So the growth and success teams that I talked about previously, this is going to allow those members to understand how these designers are performing on the platform, what's going on with their lifetime success, what's going on with their recent success, and kind of help guide them along the way so they can be more successful. So in that B2C, primarily looking at, you see a couple of these channels here, but we have actually more than 10 different channels going across Pinterest and lots of different places for this art to be able to surface. So not only do these artists promote their own work, but TeePublic actually leverages this data infrastructure to promote their work as well and help grow their reach across different channels they may not even be able to access. And then for that B2B pipeline that you see on the right with the Salesforce and Marketo side, again, this is really to help give the insight to our growth and community teams, just to help them be able to engage with these different artists. And we send out lots of emails. We always have tons of different people that are accessible for all these designers to reach out for questions, whether it be just trying to understand what's going on with trends, trying to understand how to be more successful on the platform, learn how to be more engaged with what's going on throughout different marketing pieces as well. So these data pipelines are extremely, these are very data heavy products, right? And prior to using DBT for these pipelines, they were built years ago and did not really age well with the growth we've had over the last few years. At the time that these queries were built, we only had 5 unique product types and about 500,000 designs or less at that point. with around 20,000 designers on the platform. So this worked for the time that we built it. You have to build what you need. But as we've grown, and we're currently now up to a pace where we have 21 different product types with over 8 million designs and 200,000 designers on the platform. So with that kind of growth over the past 2 to 3 years, it's going to start to put some stress on the existing systems that we have for some of these different pipelines and cause things to be a bit harder to scale. So these previous pipelines that we had set up were built on some isolated EC2 servers running redundant queries on our production databases. These queries became more and more complex over time, right? You start with 5 different files, then you add up to 10. You're like, oh, this is okay. We can still maintain and manage this. Get up to around 15. You're like, okay, this is getting a little bit nuts, right? Performance starts to become a problem. They're difficult to maintain. Testing becomes even more unreachable, right? Now that you weren't really doing any robust testing at that point. And the more you grow this out, the harder it becomes to actually do that. And the more, you actually need to be doing a lot of this testing and all as these things grow. But the real challenge that we actually needed to implement a more robust solution for was really the efficiency at scale. Like we talked about for those numbers, you're going from 500,000 designs to 8 million. That's a very large jump in scale. And as we kind of continued with that, all the product types that we start to increase on, each of those designs is actually generated for each of those different product types. So now that you add from 5 to 21, you now have 8 million products across 21 of those 8 million designs across 21 of those product types, not just 500,000 across those 5. So it continues to scale and becomes more problematic. And a lot of these queries that we had prior to DBT, they're all running on OLTP schemas, right? So none of this data was actually made for an easy query. We're running off of all of our productional systems. It's really easy for any of these changes to go into production and cause problems. Not to mention readability is going to be really painful for that. So to give an example of what that looks like, so a product feed is our real world example here. And these product feeds are basically all of the different designs on all the different product types and how they could be marketed into those systems that we showed earlier. So the initial runtime with those numbers that I talked about previously, we're running them under like 5 hours to export. It's taken quite some time, but it's still manageable. But as that started to grow and expanded our runtime to about 20 hours, and this is with multiple different optimizations that we did throughout to continue the existing structure and allow that to exist. But as someone comes in and does a product feed adjustment, say marketing comes through and says, hey, we want to add in this new field or change this piece of customization that goes into these marketing feeds, that logic is actually recreated by that ETL developer. So whoever is available at that time is taking that request, kind of putting that definition of how they understood it, and it lives inside that actual code. It's not anywhere else for anyone to see. It's living, like I said before, in that EC2 server, just nested inside the query. The code's updated in like 20 plus files. So as we said, for each of those different product types, we have one file for each of those, right? Because that's how it worked initially. And as you continue to scale out, now you have 20 different files you have to be doing the same change or even different little versions of those changes in, right? Very hard to manage. And those code deploys are needed to be in multiple different sources. And when you're running them all the time, it could be running 21 different queries that are doing the same different data pulls across production databases, which clearly it was an inefficient way to deal with it. So that's just doing a quick, easy, minor change to the product feed. But I'd rather share a real world example because we all know it's always fun to share some real examples of situations that you get involved in, right? So one night, it's around 7 p.m. We are about to go with a site-wide sale and everything's all set up. We're all good. You have your regular plans for the night. And around 7 p.m., we get a message saying, hey, we need to increase the sale price for 10 different products by $1. Nothing major, but just a minor change. Okay, so doing that, you realize that the data pipelines need to be ingested tomorrow morning for all the marketing feeds by 6 a.m. So now you're already in a capped little window for being able to get your changes out, right? So you look through it and you go, okay, I have 10 different files that need to be updated and rerun for the output to be dropped into that server for it to be picked up for those pipelines. You're going through with manual copy pastes. Of course, that's feasible, but we all know the dangers of doing copy pastes. Really easy to make mistakes working with multiple different files. And each of the runs for these generations took about 45 minutes to run. So as you're running those queries, you want to get them done as quickly as possible, but it's possible if you're running 6 of them at the same time, one of them might time out. And as you're timing out, there's no way to retry it. All your data gets lost, right? So you get stuck with this situation. Once all those are running, you're constantly checking the output files. Did this actually run successfully how I wanted it to? If none of those got updated by that 6 a.m., like what do you say? You have to reach out to the stakeholders saying like, hey, sorry, a bunch of these designs didn't get updated. Prices are going to be stale in those marketing systems. That seems like not too big of a deal, but really the impact that ends up happening for it is some of these marketing systems, if you're showing them a price that is actually lower in the marketing feed than is what is the experience on the actual website, not only is that a bad customer experience and user experience in general, but some of them can actually suspend you and actually take some of those artworks down from the system. So now it's not just impacting our own internal business, we're now impacting directly some of these designers, right? So this is their work that they're relying on. And the last thing we want to do is cause any inconvenience for them and any loss of revenue there. So needless to say, we dodged a bullet by staying up all night for that one. But clearly you learn this is not a sustainable way to handle this, right? So with the slowness of all these query generations, whether it be in the product feeds like I just talked about, or when we were talking about these B2B pipelines, pushing all this data into Salesforce Marketo, as it starts to scale, right, it takes hours longer than expected. Stakeholders are used to seeing that data refresh at, let's say 8 a.m. Now it starts showing up at 10 a.m., starts showing up at midnight, noon. Then you start to question, like, okay, if this data is taking so long to generate, is this data even accurate, right? Now you have problems with your different stakeholders, whether or not the data is actually reliable, accurate, or what's going on with it all, right? And the big thing to call out here too is with all of this data being processed in this way, we're really validating all of this data at the time it's going to these source systems, right? You can do some data validations on the actual data that you're exporting out from these systems, but a lot of it's really just when it lands in these source systems, there's not really a great testing framework set up, right? So scaling with dbt, what we ended up doing to switch to this. So we had already implemented dbt for an analytics stack and we were leveraging that really well, but realizing that we already had this in place, we had a couple options that we can do, right? So with the migration to leverage dbt as source data, we now have these data checks in the generation prior to our source systems even ingesting anything. And this is huge because now we can be extremely confident that this data is correct. So we can leverage the existing data stack and then model it to be specific to product feeds, specific to these Salesforce ingestions. So not just taking our analytical models and pushing them through, we're actually customizing it directly for what source systems we need to be pushing. That source system data is actually pulled back into our stack as well. So now we have this full 360 loop and we're able to actually see what we generated, what went into these systems, and actually have different audit tests and everything, which is extremely powerful for a smaller data team to be able to be reliable for. A couple notes here for moving that product feed generation. You can have analysts and engineering use their efforts together, right? So now it's not just relying on an engineer to build this ETL pipeline. You can actually leverage the hard work from analysts and just pull that in and communicate easily with that. And that product feed migration, when we were talking about, when we moved to dbt, it went from about 20 plus hours because it was getting extremely unrealistic to under 30 minutes, right? So now we're talking like a massive win here. We're going to 30 minutes to generate out these product feeds. That like saved so much time and so much effort and made it so much easier to work with. Also the Salesforce migration, when we're doing all of that, some of those build times are going up to like 22 hours, right? We're doing batches of these things, taking forever, a lot of redundant data building. And that is now under like 1 hour at this point. So all the stakeholders are extremely happy. They can get all the data they want. We now have validations. We can easily enrich from our analytical layers. And we don't have to deploy 20 different files. We don't have to handle all these scrambling around for all this different testing. And the business logic doesn't live in that ETL script, right? So this is a major win for us and a major win for the scale. And now this leaves us with our pipeline stack being ingestion to our data warehouse, to dbt for that major transformation, and just some light airflow orchestration with some minimal code, leveraging a data-first approach. Being able to validate that data prior to the integration, as well as within the integration, kind of allows us to have that peace of mind, right? So now we can ensure all the stakeholders' needs are met, reduces any lack of confidence, all the data for any of those syncs that are going into Salesforce, make our stakeholders happy with the reliable data on time, and saves any potential artist revenue loss, right? So any of these incorrect marketing feeds or stale data, we don't have to worry about this anymore. We make sure everyone's happy with that. Not to mention, this is much easier to maintain. So now we have a much easier process. We have clean, readable, documented models, which is something that people take for granted when you're working with dbt. But now analysts, marketers, developers, anyone can easily read and understand where this data is coming from and where it goes to. Those staging tables abstract a lot of redundant, complex logic. So now it's really easy to make a change that goes widely across in a scalable manner. And it's easy to maintain and test. So with this implementation, now we have all these different tests to make sure all the data we're looking for is valid. So wrapping up with the idea, we can't just say we have all these wins, right? There's definitely some future considerations that we have to look into. So some pieces here what we were looking to for the future is incremental. We don't want to handle the same scaling issues that we had previously. So working with incremental models on DBT, we can work towards pulling in some event modeling and create more efficiency, especially around some tagging or content related pieces. Looking at snapshots as well. We want to know how this data is actually evolving within these systems. So if we start to leverage snapshots, we can better understand what's going on in all these different systems and really start to see what is the evolution of growth, how do these marketing feeds start to change, what does it look like, did we see some changes throughout these Salesforce syncs and all. And then lastly, TBD, we have a lot of different projects that can leverage off on this existing framework. And one of the ones that we currently are doing now is our CDP, right? So this is working from our B2C marketing, our B2B, but not only that, we can leverage a lot of this data in our CDP as well. So bringing in different customer information and using the same kind of logic for here. This is going to help us scale and grow and move more in the future, leveraging DBT as kind of our main powerful source for everything. And with that, I just wanted to thank everyone. As we saw from the last slide being the first slide, we are hiring. So if you check out teepublic.com/careers, a lot of exciting opportunities across creative, design, data, finance, all different pieces. And then as we talked about earlier, we'll be in the Slack checking out any questions. So thank you everyone and look forward to some more awesome talks about the Trevor project.
Thanks, Kyle. Question time. Thoughts, questions for Kyle? Let's see. Rafi, looks like we've got one from Wyatt.
Oh, nice. All right, Kyle, we've got one question for you from Wyatt. He says, thanks for the presentation. How large was the team that migrated the scripts over to DBT? What sort of tests were performed to ensure the new script produced the same data results as prior scripts?
It's a great question. So the team was only one or two. So it was a relatively small team moving that data over. And that's always a great challenge, right? You're moving from one system to another. We actually did a lot of Q&A back and forth, leveraging a lot of stakeholder input to look at different pieces. But primarily it was just manual comparisons. We actually have looked into some different toolings these days. Like I know Datafold has some data diff and different things that may have been useful, but we went the old route of doing a lot of Excel comparisons and SQL comparisons across multiple tables.
Let's see.
I mean, I've got one. While we wait for additional questions, like what you've described is what I would describe as a production use case for a data stack, i.e., not just like let's make charts and make decisions. Do you think that's going to be more common, folks, kind of building production systems and processes on top of data stacks? And like any advice to folks that are kind of, I imagine, being put in the situation where they have to build something like this?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And seeing some of the talks, I actually asked a similar question to Tristan of just like how people are doing it for like larger systems, right? So if you have this really large analytical stack, for us, I think it's inevitable really for any company that's leveraging DBT and working with that. There really is no need to kind of build all these separate systems. You can take all of that existing structure and start to pipeline it to different places. It sped up our efficiency. It made everything much cleaner and easier to work with. So I really don't see why that would not be something to use in the future for different places.
We have another question from Jan or Jan. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. How did you break the complex logic into layers? Can you speak a bit more to that?
Sure. Yeah, so a lot of it was really digesting down all the different pieces that were redundant. So with DBT, you're kind of setting up these base tables that are bringing in all of your data. So we have design information, and a lot of that design information is repeated across these different product feeds. So you start with the base tables of bringing in all of your core data, and then the staging tables is where you're bringing a lot of that different complex logic into one place. So we have different pieces in all those different feeds that were very complex, specific to each of those files, and then a lot of it that was actually repeated. So using those staging tables within DBT, we're allowed to bring all of that into one place, making it much easier to maintain and breaking it down, and then leveraging our final actual fact tables for these different product feeds to separate out any of that additional piece with just some simple case wins, as opposed to kind of nesting any very dirty logic in there.
All right, thank you.